On a rainy afternoon in New York, Thomas Calloway, a successful millionaire, finds a 5-year-old girl abandoned on the streets, trembling with cold and eyes full of fear. When he rescues her and asks where his mother is, the girl's answer makes her heart broken and life about to change forever. New York's sky was loaded with dark clouds on that cold afternoon. The rain fell intensely, turning the streets moved into makeshift rivers. Among the hasty passers-by, no one seemed to notice a small paraded figure on the sidewalk with the soaked clothes and bare feet. She was only 5 years old, a pale and scared face, her eyes teary of rainwater that didn't seem to stop. Thomas Calloway, a millionaire entrepreneur known for his financial empire, was leaving his office. He didn't like the rain, but he didn't like to miss the opportunity to go around town when the work was done. He drove to his luxury car when something in the corner of his gaze stopped him. It was an unusual image. A small child, alone, in a visibly precarious state. She was shaking, with her head down, completely unprotected from the storm. Thomas hesitated for a moment, his logical and cold mind analyzing the situation. But then something inside him, something he couldn't identify, boosted him to go to her. "Hey, are you okay?" Thomas asked, approaching the girl. She looked up and her large brown eyes seemed to ask for helpless help. Thomas bent a little, trying not to scare her even more. "Where is your mother?" he asked, his soft but concerned voice. The girl looked at him confused and with a sadness that seemed to weigh more than her young age could carry. She shook her head, her tears mixed with the falling rain. Thomas, not knowing what to do, took her in her lap gently. She was so light and fragile. He felt the weight of the situation on his shoulders. He looked around, but no one seemed to notice the lost child in the rain. The girl's despair was stamped on her face, but there was something more there, something that wouldn't let him simply ignore. "It's okay, you're safe now," he said, trying to calm her down. The girl, in silence, squeezed against him, seeking comfort in the midst of the storm. Thomas took her quickly to her car, the cold of the night now eating even the bones, but he didn't care. The little creature needed help, and he knew he could provide that. But there was a strange feeling in his heart, something that made him question his own life and the choices he had made until that moment. Thomas's luxury car slid through the flooded streets, the rain now decreasing to a slight drizzle. The girl, still on Thomas's lap, was quiet, her small body tremendous. He looked at her, trying to understand what could have happened. Something about that situation bothered him deeply. He was a businessman, always rational, but had never come across something that made him so vulnerable. While driving, he was looking for a solution. "Where is your home? Your father or mother?" he asked, his smoother voice, trying to convey confidence to the girl. She didn't answer, just looked out the window, watching the city as if she was seeing everything for the first time. He realized that she was totally disoriented, which made the situation even more disconcerting. He thought of taking her immediately to the hospital, but something inside him said that it would not solve what was happening. He needed to understand better, needed to find out why this child was there, abandoned, alone. After a few minutes driving in silence, Thomas headed for a nearby coffee, still lost in his own thoughts. He parked the car and turned to the girl. "Let's go out a little, okay? I'll give you something hot to drink and we can talk more." The girl nodded, her hands still shaking. She didn't seem afraid of Thomas, but so tired and lost that all she wanted was comfort. Inside the coffee, Thomas ordered hot chocolate for her and a strong coffee for herself. He couldn't stop looking at the girl. She, in turn, was looking at him with a mixture of distrust and curiosity. She seemed only 5 or 6 years old, but her eyes reflected something much deeper. A pain, suffering, something Thomas didn't know how to explain. "What is your name?" Thomas asked, breaking the silence. The girl hesitated for a moment, as if the question was something new, something she had not thought in a long time. "Lily," she said, with a soft, almost inaudible voice. "Lily," repeated Thomas, trying to connect with her in some way. "Are you alone, Lily?" She just looked at him, and the expression on her face said everything. She was more alone than he could imagine. Thomas then decided that he needed to understand more, needed to find out what had happened to her, what led her there. What he didn't know, however, is that that simple question would start a journey that would change not only Lily's life, but yours too. Throughout the conversation, Thomas knew that Lily had no home. "I had no family anymore, at least not the way he imagined it." His mother, who was involved in a cycle of drug abuse and abusive relationships, had been gone for weeks, leaving Lily alone on the streets. The girl didn't know what happened to her, but one thing was clear. She had nowhere to go. Thomas felt a knot in his throat. He couldn't believe what he heard. The girl was literally alone in the world. He who had everything: money, power, a comfortable life, was powerless in the face of that reality. He had done business around the world, but had never known true poverty, despair, the abandonment of someone so young. He was silent for a few moments, processing the information. As much as I wanted to help, I didn't know where to start. But something inside him, something he didn't know how to explain, said he couldn't leave that girl alone, that he needed to do something to change Lily's fate. "You won't be alone, Lily," he said, his voice firm but full of emotion. "I'll take care of you. We'll find a solution for it." Lily looked at him, her eyes still full of uncertainty, but also with a slight spark of hope. She didn't know what that meant, but at that moment she believed in Thomas's words. She believed he would help her, that finally someone had noticed her. In the following days, Thomas did what seemed to be unthinkable. He decided to take responsibility for taking care of Lily. He hired a team of social workers and psychologists to help recover her, and the child began to live with him in his luxurious home in the upper zone of New York. But despite all attempts to give her a quieter and safer life, something in her behavior did not seem to adjust to the luxury life she now led. Lily, despite the welcome and comfort, seemed to be always distant. She was a cheerful girl, but her joy was broken by moments of deep silence, as if a piece of her soul had been lost forever. At night she woke up, scared, as if she had nightmares, always asking her mother, always looking for something Thomas didn't know how to give. Thomas was powerless in the face of this. He had the power to offer a comfortable life, a future without financial worries, but did not know how to fill the emptiness inside Lily. Each attempt to make her smile seemed to fail. He took her for walks, bought toys, but nothing seemed to be enough. The girl was distant, as if she was always expecting something or someone who wasn't there. One day, Thomas sat with Lily's psychologist, Dr. Eva Marks, to better understand what was going on. "She is very traumatized, Thomas," said Eva with a tone of worry, looking at him with the seriousness of those who know the pain behind a forced smile. "Lily has not lost just her mother. She has lost her sense of security, belonging. She has grown in an unstable environment, and now, even with all the help you offer, she still feels that life is uncertain. She doesn't know what safe love is. She doesn't know what it is to trust someone without fear of being left behind." Thomas felt devastated with those words. He had never imagined that it was so difficult to help a child rebuild his life, especially such a small child. He began to realize that what Lily really needed was not more toys or more material comfort, but a solid emotional base, something he didn't know how to give her. Meanwhile, the search for Lily's mother continued. Thomas had given the order for the police to search, but despite all the efforts, no clue about his mother's whereabouts had been found. Lily, although very young to completely understand what was happening, was beginning to feel the weight of her mother's absence. She asked Thomas where she was, always with a look of hope, but also of despair. It was then that one day something extraordinary happened. While Thomas was at an important meeting in the office, he received an unexpected call. It was an unknown number. When he answered, the voice on the other side of the line caused him an immediate shock. "You're taking care of my daughter," said the woman, her hoarse, anguished voice. It was Lily's mother. Thomas's heart fired. He never imagined that Lily's mother was still alive. After weeks searching, he had begun to lose hope. Now suddenly she was on the line, talking to him. "I knew where she is," the woman continued. I want to see her. Please let me see her." Thomas's reaction was immediate, but not without a whirlwind of emotions. He felt a mixture of relief and anger. How could Lily's mother simply disappear and leave her on the streets? How could she allow the girl to live that pain? But at the same time, he knew Lily needed answers. She deserved to know the truth about what happened to her mother. I don't know if this is a good idea," Thomas said, his voice shaking with the decision. "She's a very fragile child. I don't know if she's ready for that." "She needs me, Thomas," the woman insisted, her voice breaking. "I know I did terrible things, but now I'm trying to change. I'm not a good mother, but I'm trying to be better. Please, I just want to see her." Thomas was silent for a moment, processing the words. He looked at Lily, who was in the garden of the house playing with some flowers. She looked so fragile, so far from life that he had imagined for her. And at that moment, he knew that his decision would now change everyone's future. Thomas's decision was not easy. He knew Lily's mother, although she seemed to be sorry, could not be the magic solution to all the girl's problems. She had been negligent and abusive, and the fact that she was now trying to reconnect with Lily brought more questions than answers. However, he could not simply deny Lily's mother the opportunity to see her daughter, especially since he knew that was something the girl might need, even if she didn't know yet. After some conversations with Eve, the psychologist, and considering how important it would be for Lily to have answers about the past, Thomas did something she would never imagine to do. He allowed Lily's mother, named Sarah, to come to her home for a supervised meeting. He knew that although the decision was risky, he needed to give Lily the chance to confront his past in a healthy way. On the scheduled day, Sarah arrived accompanied by a social worker that Thomas had hired to ensure that the meeting was as secure as possible. He watched her for a moment as she approached the door. The woman seemed to be in a state of despair, her eyes full of regret, and her aged countenance for the difficult life she had led. Thomas did not know if he believed in her words, but could not ignore the fact that somewhere she was still Lily's mother, and this connection needed to be faced. When Sarah came in, Lily was in the garden, throwing flowers in the wind. She didn't seem to realize her mother's arrival. Thomas approached the girl, bending to her height. "Lily," he said softly, "someone is here to see you." Lily looked at him, her curious eyes but not completely understanding what was happening. She followed Thomas to the garden glass door, where Sarah was waiting. When the girl saw her, her face turned. She recognized the woman before her, but there was a distance between them that could not be ignored. Lily approached with caution, her slow and hesitant steps. "Are you my mother?" Lily asked, the trembling voice, the expression full of doubt. Sarah swallowed hard, the regret stamped on her face. She crouched slowly until she was up to Lily, her hands shaking when trying to reach her daughter's face. "Yes, honey, it's me. I know I did terrible things, but I was lost. I want you to know that no matter how failed, I love you." Lily didn't move. She looked at her with the eyes of a child who, although she wishes to understand, did not know if she could trust. I missed you a lot," Sarah continued, her eyes full of tears. "I was afraid and didn't know how to take care of you. I didn't know where to go, but now I'm trying to change. I want you to forgive me, and that we can start over if you want." Lily looked at her for a long time, as if trying to gather the puzzle pieces in her mind. She didn't know what to answer. She remembered the nights of solitude and the fears she had passed alone, but she also knew that deep down what Sarah said now was different. Thomas watched from afar, feeling the weight of the situation. He knew that although Sarah's gesture was important, he could not allow Lily to be hurt again. He had committed to protecting the girl, and his main priority was to ensure that she was not placed in a position where her heart was broken once again. "Lily, I'm here for you," Thomas said, gently approaching the girl. "You don't have to make any decision now. I want you to know that regardless of all, you are sure here with me." Sarah, in turn, looked at Thomas with a look of gratitude and also guilt. She knew he was doing the right thing, and that his presence beside Lily was essential, but regret that she was not able to take care of her daughter was written on every line of her face. Lily looked at Thomas, and her eyes sought the certainty that he would continue by his side. Thomas crouched in front of him, offering a comforting smile. She didn't need to do anything now. She didn't need to choose between Sarah and him. He would be there for her, the time it was necessary. The silence was interrupted by Sarah's voice, who asked, "Can you let me stay a little longer? I know there's a lot to rebuild, but can I try to be part of her life again?" Thomas looked at Lily, who was now holding her hand. She was determined, and at that moment, he knew that the journey that was about to start with Sarah, though difficult, would be fundamental to cure the wounds of the past of everyone involved. The meeting between Lily and her mother was not simple. There was no explosion of emotions or great reconciliation. What happened was something much quieter, an exchange of looks and gestures that spoke more than words could express. Sarah, now aware of everything she had lost and the pain she had caused her daughter, began to realize that Lily's confidence could not be rebuilt overnight. Sarah, after that first date, was closer to Lily, but with caution. She spent more time with the girl, trying to show genuinely that she was willing to be a better mother. However, Lily was still in a state of uncertainty. She didn't know if she could trust Sarah again. What hurt the girl most was not the lack of love, but the fear of being left behind once again. Thomas, in turn, found himself in a difficult position. He had committed to giving the girl a safe and loving life, but now, with Lily's mother trying to regain her daughter, he was being placed in a role he never imagined occupying. He knew he couldn't replace Lily's mother, but the bond he had built with her over time was strong, and he feared that Sarah, with his unstable past, could hurt Lily again. Thomas walked away a little, seeking answers within him. He knew that on some level, he had fallen in love with the girl. He felt unconditional love for her, something deep that transcended the idea of simple responsibility. He wanted her to have a chance to live without fear, without pain, and could rebuild the confidence he had lost so much. One day, after a therapy session with Lily's psychologist Eva, Thomas made a decision. He had done his part, but now it was time to give Lily the opportunity to decide what she wanted. He felt that for the girl to have a real chance of healing, she would need to be the protagonist of her own story. Thomas's decision was clear. He would let Lily make the choice about who she wanted her maternal figure. He knew that this did not mean abdicating his role in her life, but giving her the freedom to take the reins of his own destiny. Thomas wanted Lily to have control over her life, without further trauma, no further losses. She was a strong child, stronger than he could imagine, and he believed that confidence would be gradually rebuilt, but with unconditional patience and love. He called Sarah and Lily for an important conversation. They were in Thomas's office, with the town's large windows offering stunning views, but inside the room the weather was tense. Lily was sitting next to Sarah, watching both, not knowing what to expect. "Lily," Thomas started with a soft but firm voice, "I want you to know that you have all the right to choose what is best for you. You don't have to decide now, but when you're ready, it will be your choice. I will always be here for you, whatever the decision you make." Lily looked at him with her big brown eyes. The girl seemed calmer than he imagined, as if somehow she knew she had more control over her life than she had ever known before. She turned slowly to Sarah. Sarah, her eyes full of tears, held Lily's hands and said with a trembling voice, "I know I'm not the mother you needed, but I'm here now. I want to try to be a mother for you, Lily. I know I can do that, I promise." Lily was silent for a moment, her hands squeezing Sarah's. She looked at Thomas, then to her mother, and for the first time a small smile appeared on her face. I want to try," Lily said, her small voice but full of a kind of strength Thomas never imagined she had. "I want to try with you, Mom." Lily's words were simple, but meant more than anything else at that moment. Sarah pulled her into a tight hug, her tears falling on Lily's shoulders while Thomas watched the scene. Her tight heart. He knew this was not a complete victory. Lily's journey was just beginning, and the scars of the past didn't suddenly disappear. But at that moment he realized that he had given her a chance to choose her own way, and that was more important than anything he could do for her. After Sarah's first meeting with Lily, the impact of this decision reverberated on everyone involved. Thomas found himself in an internal dilemma, feelings of guilt and responsibility starting to weigh more on his chest. He knew he couldn't be Sarah's replacement, but now he felt the weight of what he had decided, to deliver Lily to her mother, a woman with a shadowy past. Sarah, despite her positive attitude and search for change, had no experience or the emotional resources needed to be the stable mother Lily would need. She tried, of course, but the mistakes of her previous life still chased her. Lily, who had begun to trust Thomas and feel safe by her side, was now lost between two worlds. "I didn't know if I should completely trust your mother, or if you should continue to trust the man who had welcomed her." The child was in an emotional crossroads, with the weight of decisions she should never have to do so young. Thomas, feeling powerless and observing Lily's internal struggle, sought the help of Eve, the psychologist. He needed guidance because the situation was becoming harder than he had imagined. He knew that at some level he was helping Lily rebuild her life, but she couldn't deny that she was also dealing with her own doubts and fears about Sarah. "I don't know what is best for her, Eva," said Thomas, the voice full of frustration. "Be part of her life, but at the same time giving the mother room. I don't know how to balance it." Eva looked at him with understanding, his soft but firm words. "The best for Lily is that she has time to understand her own emotions, Thomas. We can't force a relationship between her and Sarah. We need to give her the space to process what she feels, as we ensure she is safe, regardless of who is next to her." Thomas, in silence, reflected on this. He knew the situation was more complicated than he would like to admit. As much as I tried, I could not control Lily's healing process. What he could do was ensure that she had the options and time needed to make her own decisions. Meanwhile, Sarah kept trying to approach Lily, but the girl's resistance was beginning to be visible. She still didn't know how to deal with the conflicting feelings that came up with her mother trying, once again, to be part of her life. The child was still a deep fear of being left behind, and that was something that Sarah could not erase with words or promises. In a moment of reflection, Sarah approached Thomas. "I don't know what else to do," she said, her eyes teary. "I was wrong, and I know she's right to reject me, but I don't want her to see me like a stranger. I don't want to be just another person who disappoints her." Thomas, though still cautious, felt a wave of empathy for Sarah. He knew she was trying, but he also knew it wasn't enough to try. She had to demonstrate with actions and time she was committed to her daughter. The reconciliation process would be long, and this would affect everyone involved. Deep down, he wanted to see Lily happy, but the way for that was still full of uncertainty. Time has passed slowly, but with it came remarkable changes. Lily, now safer than ever, began to signal her adaptability. The journey was not easy, and the scars of early childhood and abandonment remained a daily challenge, but she began to flourish in a way that surprised everyone around her. Thomas, in turn, also underwent a major transformation. Before a skeptical man whose world was summarized to numbers and businesses, he gradually began to understand that the true meaning of life was not on material success, but on the impact he had on the people around him. Lily taught him, in ways he had never imagined, about the importance of vulnerability, unconditional love, and commitment. Despite the tension between him and Sarah, their relationship became. It was not an immediate friendship relationship, but they began to understand each other's role in Lily's life. Thomas knew that Sarah still had a lot to prove, but her sincerity and effort to be a good mother began to be more visible, and gradually Lily's confidence in her was growing up. Lily started looking for moments with her mother, something that once seemed impossible. The afternoons in the park, Sarah's small gestures of affection, the conversations, though still uncomfortable, began to create a new base. The girl gradually learned to accept that life, despite her ups and downs, could bring new opportunities. One afternoon, while Thomas watched Lily play with Sarah in the garden of her house, something inside him lit. The girl was smiling, her eyes shine with genuine happiness, something he had not seen in her for long. She had been marked by her traumatic experience, but now, with patience and time, she was starting to break free from the bonds of the past. It was a moment of deep reflection for Thomas. He realized that throughout this process, he had also changed. When he rescued Lily, he thought he could be his savior, but now he understood that it was not about saving someone. It was about walking beside this person, guiding it, protecting it, but giving it the freedom to grow and make its own decisions. This was the greatest gift he could offer the girl, freedom to be herself, to become who she should always be, without the ghosts of abandonment and pain. While Lily was more open to interactions with her mother, Thomas began to notice changes in her as well. She was more communicative, more involved in school activities, and even began to show interest in music, something that once seemed completely out of her reach. Sarah, for the first time in a long time, experienced a sense of genuine happiness, a satisfaction that she was slowly rebuilding her daughter's confidence. But the biggest sign of growth came when Lily did something simple but extremely significant. One day, while they had dinner together, she looked at Sarah and with a shy smile said, "I love you, Mom." Sarah stopped for a moment, her heart beating rapidly, and then hugged her tightly. It was an expression of love that so long ago she didn't believe she could receive. For Sarah, that simple phrase meant more than anything she could achieve. It was proof that there was something stronger than the wounds of the past: love, forgiveness, and patience. Thomas, watching from afar, felt a wave of emotion. He knew that over time he had fulfilled his role, but I also knew that the real work was yet to come. Lily was far from being healed completely. She would need time to process everything she had passed, but he now understood that true growth came from within. No matter how much he tried to control the situation, Lily's true strength had always come from herself. Sarah, with tears in her eyes, looked at Thomas, and for the first time he saw in his gaze a huge gratitude. She knew she couldn't change what she had done, but she was trying with her heart. being the mother that Lily deserved, and in a way he supported her. As the months passed, a sense of stability began to emerge in Thomas's house. Lily was flourishing under the combination of care she received from both Thomas and Sarah, but there was still something in the air, a tension that no one could completely dissipate. Although Lily was starting to open and trust again, there was a shadow on her, something the girl didn't know how to express, but still there, like an invisible wall. Thomas watched all this with concern. He knew Lily was still dealing with a complicated past, and despite all attempts at reconciliation and love, he felt that the girl had not really soothed the pain of being abandoned. Something needed to happen, something deeper, so that she could finally break free from the weight of her story. That's when a new challenge came up. Sarah, although more and more present in Lily's life, could not deal with her past effectively. She sought therapeutic support, but something inside her still prevented her from opening completely. She feared, perhaps, being seen as unable to give Lily everything she needed. The feeling of inadequacy still hung over her, even when she tried to be the best mother she could be. The atmosphere was more tense than usual when a letter arrived for Thomas. It was a cool correspondence that he did not expect, something that took him by surprise. He opened it and read the words that would transform the situation in a way he had not foreseen. "You have a marked audience for Lily's guard," said the letter. "Because Sarah's claim was unable to provide a stable and safe life for the child, a court will determine who will be the main figure in Lily's guard." The letter, with a huge weight, made Thomas stop. The reality of what it meant hit it as a blow. Sarah was once again challenged as a mother, and Lily, who had gone so much, could be taken from her current environment, the only one she knew since Thomas had rescued her. He felt the weight of responsibility again, and a deep doubt formed in his heart. He knew how much Lily was attached to Sarah, but he also knew how much the child saw him as a central figure in his life. He didn't want to be the cause of another loss to the girl, but at the same time he wanted to make sure she had a full and healthy life. Thomas sought Eve to discuss what could be done. The psychologist warned him about the emotional risks of involving Lily in this lawsuit. "She may feel once again rejected, Thomas," Eva said seriously. "This process, any way it is resolved, will be another loss to her, and you and Sarah will need to be in tune to make sure she understands that, regardless of the decision, you will be by her side." The great dilemma now was like protecting Lily during this process. Although Thomas's love for her was immense, he knew the truth was not so simple. He was so involved in his own transformation that he didn't know exactly what role he should occupy, if he were really the best for her, or if he was somehow becoming an obstacle on the path of what she really needed. Sarah, when informed about the judicial hearing, panicked. The feeling of failure has become stronger in your heart. She feared losing Lily once again, and the fact that the system was putting her ability to be a mother under trial made her question herself once again. "I don't want that to happen," Sarah told Thomas, her eyes full of despair. "I know I have failed many things, but please don't take Lily out of me. She's my daughter and I'm trying. I'm really trying." Thomas looked at her, her tired but firm eyes. He knew what she felt, and he also felt the pressure of being the equilibrium point. The question now was whether it could be the figure stable enough for Lily, or if the court would decide that it was just a temporary solution to the girl's deep problems. He knew that first of all he needed to be transparent, with Sarah, with Lily, and with himself. What would he do to the court decision to come? The judicial hearing was marked. The court, with its cold walls and wooden chairs, was a completely different environment from the welcoming home that Thomas had created for Lily. The girl was restless, not completely understanding what was happening, but feeling the tension in the air. Sarah was visibly nervous, her red eyes from crying, and Thomas couldn't help but feel the weight of the whole situation. He knew that the judge's decision would change Lily's life forever. The court was full of formalities, and the lawyers began to submit their allegations. Sarah's lawyer argued that although she had a turbulent past, she was striving to recover and provide a better life for her daughter. He insisted that she had the right to be a mother, and was ready to do anything to regain Lily's confidence. On the other hand, Thomas's lawyer argued that he had already become stable and reliable paternal figure in Lily's life. He introduced the fact that since he had rescued the girl from the street, she stabilized emotionally, was progressing at school, and had a much safer and more loving life with him. Lily was there, sitting next to Thomas, holding his hand. She looked at the court, confused, trying to understand what was going on. It was not a child to understand all the complexity of that moment, but something at the bottom of his heart told him that something very important was at stake for her. The judge, with a serious expression, looked at everyone involved and started talking. The room was absolutely silent as he pondered on the allegations. "I'm aware of all the difficulties and challenges Lily has faced so far," the judge told Thomas to Sarah. "I also understand that both Sarah and Thomas have Lily's best interests in mind. However, it is my responsibility to ensure that the decision is the best for the child's well-being." Thomas felt the tension increase in his chest. He looked at Sarah, who, with his hands intertwined, seemed to pray in silence. Lily, without understanding the weight of the situation, looked at him with his eyes big, full of questions. The judge paused before continuing. "I need to take into account not only the circumstances present, but also the future. Sarah's situation, although showed progress, is still unstable. The stability provided by Thomas is undeniable. However, we cannot underestimate the maternal bond." The whole room seemed suspended in the air, and time seemed to stop as the judge pondered his words. Thomas felt his heart beat hard, fearing what could happen next. He knew Lily needed Sarah, but she also knew she needed him. How could he somehow balance all this? Finally, the judge made the announcement that no one expected. "I decided that for now Lily will continue to live with Thomas," said the judge, with a firm decision. "However, Sarah will have the right to regular visits and, depending on her progress in the coming months, the guard will be reevaluated. This decision is not permanent, but an attempt to ensure that the child has the time necessary to adapt, and for the mother to continue to rebuild her life. Lily's well-being is the priority." There was a moment of absolute silence in the room. Sarah looked at Thomas, her eyes full of a mixture of gratitude and pain. She knew this was not the definitive solution, but it was a chance. She would still have to work to regain her daughter's confidence and prove she able to take care of her, but she still had an opportunity. Lily, who did not completely understand the implications of the judgment, looked at Thomas, and the expression on her face looked like a mixture of relief and confusion. She didn't know what that meant for her future, but one thing was clear: she was not being rejected. She still had a chance to decide. After the hearing, as they went out of court, Sarah approached Lily and, in a soft voice, said, "I know that's not what you expected, but I'll keep trying, Lily. I love you." Lily looked at Sarah with her curious eyes, and for the first time in a long time she smiled slightly, a shy smile, full of hope. "I love you too, Mom." Thomas, watching this exchange, felt a wave of emotion. He knew that there was still a long way ahead, but the most important thing at that time was the fact that Sarah had taken the first step to regain her daughter's confidence, and Lily, even though she completely understood, was beginning to accept that love, though complicated, was still there. After the court ruling, Lily's life, Sarah and Thomas, continued to unfold at a calmer pace, but the reconstruction journey was far from being completed. Lily's emotional recovery process was gradual. Although she lived with Thomas, a new dynamic was formed. Sarah, now with a lighter space to reconstruct her relationship with Lily, has fully dedicated herself to regain her daughter's confidence. With regular visits and the help of therapists, the mother and daughter began to gradually approach. The first weeks were difficult. Lily, although she wanted to believe her mother's love, could not ignore the pain of abandonment that was still in her heart. Each Sarah's visit was a mixture of joy and fear. Fear of being left again, fear of being hurt. But over time, the girl began to realize that her mother was striving, and that as much as the past could not be erased, the present could be different. Thomas, in turn, has become constant support in Lily's life, but in a more mature way. He knew he could not take Sarah's place, but his presence in Lily's life was still essential. He offered him security, emotional support, and the certainty that regardless of changes, he would always be there for her. Lily now understood that Thomas's love was not conditional. It did not depend on being the best father, but of being a person who, even without blood ties, saw him as a being worthy of love and respect. Sarah, with her continuous effort, proved herself and her daughter that she was able to be the mother Lily deserved. Although there were still many challenges, she never gave up on winning Lily's confidence, and her bond, though fragile, was beginning to strengthen. A fall afternoon, a few months after the audience, Sarah took Lily to the park, where the two played together, laughing and sharing moments of simple joy. Lily looked at Sarah with a genuine smile and said, "I knew you would make it, Mom. I knew." Sarah hugged her tightly. feeling a wave of relief and gratitude. She knew she would still have a lot to do, but at that moment she felt she had taken the first step to reconnecting with her daughter in a true way. Thomas, watching from afar, smiled at himself. He knew that there was still a long way ahead, but he also knew Lily had found her place in the world, surrounded by love and, most importantly, for choices that would allow her to grow with confidence. The story of Lily, Sarah, and Thomas was not of perfection, but it was a story of resilience, start, and love that, although not easy, was able to heal deep wounds and build a brighter future. What began with the pain of abandonment became the hope of a new beginning. Years passed and Lily's life continued to flourish, now marked by the trust and security she always sought. Sarah, with the support of Thomas, became a solid mother, transformed by pain, but also by the strength of her unconditional love. Lily, now a young girl full of dreams and confidence, has learned to forgive the past and embrace the future. She was no more the girl scared that once, but a determined young woman, surrounded by the sake of a mother who regained her and a man who, without blood ties, became her true family. Do you believe that love and forgiveness can heal to the deepest wounds? The journey of Lily, Sarah, and Thomas shows us that, even with difficulties, life can offer new growth opportunities and fresh start. And you, what would you do in a moment of such difficult choices? How would you face the challenge of rebuilding lost trust? Share your reflections and tell us, what is your greatest learning about family and restarts? Be sure to spread this story of hope and transformation with those who also believe in the strength of love.